everyone, and welcome to Our Special Lives. Today we're talking about social workers, what they do, how you can access them, and what an incredible source of support these professionals can be for you if you integrate them into your child's special needs team. I am so excited to welcome my guest today, Helen Williams, who is an integrated behavioral health social worker. Helen graduated from UNC Chapel Hill and has a master's degree in social work from Virginia Commonwealth University. Helen is currently working with Secours Richmond Hope Therapy Center through its partnership with United Methodist Family Services. Richmond Hope Therapy Center serves children with physical disabilities from up and down the East Coast and beyond with its innovative Eastern European models of therapy. Hi, Helen. Welcome to Our Special Lives.
Hi, Laura. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you guys today. I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, thanks. I'm really excited to talk to you because I feel like many people are a little bit in the dark when it comes to understanding what role a social worker plays in their child's special needs team. And I know we've had various situations in the hospital or specialty clinics where we were introduced to social workers and we didn't really understand how they could help us. And, while they offered to help us, I didn't really know what to ask them for. So do you think you could educate us a little bit on the types of things that you do to help families and children with special needs?
I think that's such a great question. So you're correct. Social work is really broad. So I think it is really important to know how each individual social worker can assist your family. So some of the support services that I offer at Richmond Hope Therapy Center is counseling services to patients, to siblings, and also to families. I'll offer assistance in navigating systems like the school and the healthcare system. So if you have questions about topics like IEPs or waivers, I'm happy to look into those questions. If it's something that I can't answer myself, I'm always happy to connect with other social workers or communities to try and answer families' questions about topics like that. I like to connect families to community resources. So activities that the child can participate in or the family can participate in together. Always happy to look into community resources for families. And then this is something that's more unique to my role, but they do offer these services in the community. I offer team meetings for patients, families, and the therapists to come together to talk about the individual treatment plan of the child with several disciplines all together. So talking about needs as it relates to physical therapy, occupational therapy, school, social supports. So with that, we can all come together to talk about goals and ways we can support the child in reaching those goals.
So if I'm working with, if I want to work with a team of people to have kind of a holistic or integrated approach to my child's healthcare team, that's something that someone like you could assist with?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm noticing more and more that I'm seeing social workers kind of also in like the hospital setting or with pediatricians' offices or pediatric subspecialties like pediatric GI or pediatric pulmonology. So are those types of people able to, let's say that you're having like a pulmonology issue, but there's also like a GI component to it, and maybe there's a need for some home nursing, like some private duty nursing or something. Is that a process that the social worker could help coordinate?
I would imagine that it would come up enough that the social worker should be able to assist in navigating that. But if they're not able to directly, they should be able to connect you with another social worker that might specialize in that area.
I just wanted to jump in and ask you something. A couple of times when I've been approached by a social worker in the context of like, let's say the hospital or something, I've been a little worried because I think maybe that I think sometimes people confuse social workers with like child protective services or that they're being evaluated. Do you ever run into that? I mean, is that a myth that we can just go ahead and dispel? Because I feel like people's concern about that may prevent them from reaching out to you guys.
No, I really appreciate you bringing that up. I definitely think that it's an important topic to discuss because a lot of times we can have a misunderstanding of the services that could be offered by someone like a social worker based on what we see, on the media or our experience in other settings. Child Protective Services worker is a well-known social worker title, so that can be people's impression of social workers.
When someone approaches you, like in a pediatric setting, like in a doctor's setting or a hospital setting, they're really there to help you is the point. You don't have to be worried that somehow they're with Child Protective Services and they're trying to make sure that your child is, adequately taken care of. They're really there to help. And I think that's the point that we're trying to make. Yeah,
Laura, that was exactly what I was going to say. The way I think that's a good way to frame it when approached by a social worker is to think of them as a support service. They truly want to be there with the family and help them access whatever community needs there are for them, whether that's mental health services, community resources, bringing together team members to have a conversation, helping the children thrive in systems like school and healthcare. So just trying to be that support system to the family is the intention of social work services and settings.
Yeah, that's great. I wish that we had used the social worker when my son was in the NICU to a greater degree, because one of the things that we had such trouble with was a lot of the kind of insurance applications, Medicaid waiver process, all of that. Is that something that you guys work with?
Yes. And something that is a big interest of mine too is going out and learning from other specialists on those areas, because waivers, Medicaid, insurance is always changing. So I definitely think it's a topic that as social workers and also as parents, we can always benefit from refreshers. So something that I like to make parents and in the community aware of are training opportunities available by specialists in those areas. So I agree. That's definitely something that social workers can help you with, and something that they can connect you to others that can answer your specific questions on topics like insurance.
Yeah, like it's interesting. I'm working right now on something where I'd like to use what I believe is an assistive technology allowance that we get every year through my son's Medicaid waiver. There's a tremendous amount of confusion about it, even with his healthcare provider, like his insurance provider.
Yes.
In other words, I think it's part of the waiver, but I don't think they know that. And so I'm trying to navigate that. And it's great to know that if I needed help, I could reach out to you or someone like you to kind of help with that project.
Absolutely. Yes, I'd say that there are several specialty services in the waivers that you do have to figure out how to access those, and that can be a barrier to receiving those services. So a social worker or another specialist in that topic can definitely help in navigating that.
Oh, good. Well, quick question for you. What are the most frequently asked questions that you get from families? Could you give us a sense of like maybe the top 2 or 3 kind of things that people are coming to you in particular to kind of help them navigate?
Families don't necessarily know how to respond to a social worker when they offer for support. So a question that I like for people to ask me, it's not necessarily asked all the time, is in what services do you specialize? Because that lets you know the areas that particular social worker is knowledgeable about and able to assist you. If you're in a setting like a community services board, they might offer different services than an integrated behavioral health social worker or a school social worker. So getting to know the social workers in your individual settings and learning from them what particular skill sets they have. So that's definitely a question I love being asked. And
well, just to interject too, I know that there's a lot of practice areas, but if someone, let's say, has a social worker through their pediatric practice or through their subspecialty group, even if that social worker didn't necessarily specialize in one area, I imagine that you guys have a network that you guys could refer to a different social worker who maybe was skilled in that area.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's something for people to keep in mind, that even if their social worker is kind of, has a certain set of parameters, that social worker is still an excellent resource for getting to the social worker that can help them with what they need.
Absolutely. Yes. Social workers are, even if there's only one social worker in a particular setting, they're connected with other social workers in the community, that they can connect you to the right person based on the need.
Yeah, that's great. So any other FAQs that you get, or sort of situations that you commonly deal with?
Yes. So I have two others that come to mind. I'm frequently asked about what resources are available in my community that are a good fit for the child and the family. So depending on what they're looking for, are they looking for mental health services or community activities that might be a good fit for special needs children, support services for siblings. So I like being able to individually match families with community resources based on the needs of that family. So social workers are a great resource for connecting to community resources based on the needs of all members in the family. So something that I get asked about a lot is how to prepare for age-based transitions. And when you hear the word transition, I think a lot of people think of that transition from like high school age into adulthood, but I like thinking about that throughout childhood. So transition from the NICU into services like early intervention and to other outpatient provider services, transitioning into the school system to an IEP, middle school to high school to adulthood. A lot of changes occur during those ages for things like Social Security, Medicaid, preparing for a job, what are your educational needs? So being able to think holistically about the needs of the child and the family for any sort of transition. Social workers can be a good resource in navigating that and kind of checking off your to-do list and recognizing what needs to be done to prepare for those transitions so you feel more prepared going in.
Yeah, that's great. We did not really have a whole lot of support with that transition, and having somebody kind of quarterbacking those changes, I think, would have been really helpful. And then as far as IEPs, I mean, IEPs are kind of a difficult thing that I think all parents of special needs kids struggle with. Can you tell us about some of the types of things that you could help with through the IEP process?
There are IEP advocates that, based on the needs of the family, may be a good fit. So I offer more supportive services for an IEP. So with some of our families, I will sit in IEP meetings. I know other social workers in other communities that are willing to do the same. So if a family would like an additional support in the room, that's definitely something that I'm happy to do. Also happy to read over the IEP with the family and talk about questions that you can ask, how to join with your team in the IEP so that those meetings can be as effective as possible. I'm also happy to refer to an IEP advocate if that is what is most appropriate for the family.
Well, that sounds good. I mean, who can't use more support in an IEP meeting, right? Yeah, and I mean, I find the IEP itself to be very confusing in terms of all of the different sections.
I want to be able to figure out what they would benefit from the most. Is it someone to sit in the room with them, someone to sit down and just read over it and think of different questions to ask? We all think a little differently, right? So it's nice to be able to work together as a team and come up with different questions to make sure that your child's needs are supported and recognized in that meeting.
So what are the kinds of community supports that you have access to? I'm just thinking, if anybody listening, if you can give some ideas of things you've done, maybe they can find a social worker on one of these teams that may have some similar ideas.
Absolutely. So I know you mentioned that my role is in partnership with UMFS. So I love connecting families to some of our services at UMFS. We have another service called Family Support Partner that is a parent who has had a child with mental health needs, and they are offering support services to another parent of children with mental health needs, and navigating systems like IEPs, school, similar to what services that a social worker would offer, but they're able to do it on a
Peer-to-peer
more thorough basis. Yes,
Okay.
And a peer-to-peer basis. So I love referring families to that service because they're a parent that can relate. And sometimes that can speak volumes, having someone that truly understands what you're experiencing. That's a really cool service that UMFS offers. We also offer ICC services, which is intensive care coordination. So it's like a wraparound team meeting, similar to the team meetings that I facilitate, that a facilitator is able to go in depth with the treatment team to talk about a particular need for a child. For example, if a family needs assistance in accessing a waiver, you put the teacher, the school counselor, the parents, the child, and a family support partner in the same room and talk about how can we work together to support this family and this child in getting a waiver. So having all team members come together to talk about the needs and find out ways that you can work together to support those needs.
As far as some fun activities that you put together, I know you've done a couple through Richmond Hope. Can you talk a little bit about those? Because I think it might be important if people are looking, maybe around the holidays or over the summer, maybe they're looking for something where their special needs child can be included. What are the types of things that you're kind of putting together for your folks?
And several special needs communities in Richmond have gotten really creative with their virtual programs. I know Jacob's Chance and Friendship Circle of Virginia have moved a lot of their programs virtually. So it's fun to see how programs have gotten creative and how you can still access those during this time.
Yeah, I'll have to get some of those links from you and maybe put them in the show notes because that might be fun for people to check out. So, Helen, what is your recommendation if somebody is looking to access a social worker? Where should they start? What should they, where should they look?
I think that I would think about what specifically the need is, and then think about where that social worker might be available. So for instance, if the need is related to insurance, I would look into my outpatient or inpatient healthcare providers and access the social workers there. If it's related more to school, reaching out to a school social worker. Mental health, you can access community service boards. Department of Social Services is a good resource as well. Integrated behavioral health social workers focus more on that holistic outlook. So if you are tapped into a healthcare system, inpatient or outpatient, they are definitely a good resource for really any social work needs. If they don't have the answer, they will refer you to the correct person.
Yeah, I mean, I'm noticing just from a personal basis that I believe our pediatrician's office has one on staff. And then, like I said, the pediatric subspecialties, typically the hospital floors like the PICU, NICU, and even the pediatric floor will have access to a social worker, like you're saying, through the community boards, like the Department of Social Services in your county, things like that. One other question, what is the cost to work with a social worker? But kind of in general, like in your situation or with these other kind of consultative social workers as part of a medical practice or something like that.
Absolutely. So those services are generally free to families. So definitely take advantage of social work support services. We are there to help in any way that we can. So a lot of healthcare systems, the social work services are free, and a lot of nonprofits, school systems, the services are free. A lot are funded through grants or foundations that are able to support social workers being in place in those settings. So it is oftentimes a free resource for families.
Wow, that's fantastic. Well, Helen, thank you so much for coming on today and educating us all about social workers. I think that you guys are an incredible resource. I hope that people reach out, more often and loop you in on all the things that you're expert in dealing with. And it's just phenomenal that you're here to help families and have such a broad depth of knowledge on so many different topics.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really enjoyed being here with you today. Definitely, please reach out if there's any social work needs that I'd be able to help with in the community or other social workers. Please contact us. We're here to help.
That sounds great. And I'll link to some of the specific things that we talked about in this video. So thanks again, Helen.